Hello and good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Jungle Gyms Tuesday TikTok. We've returned after the festivities, and we can't miss out on the latest drama at Celtic. What a year it's been! Well, a half term it's been so far for Celtic, and the drama continues. So McGinty, Wilfred Nancy has been sacked. The news is broken, and the return of Martin O'Neill. Um, Probably, in my opinion, way overdue. The sacking of Wilfred Nancy. I guess we'll get to that. There's a lot of kind of questions I've got to you about the tenure and when your tipping point was for Wilfred Nancy. But Martin O'Neill came in. He steadied the ship already so far this season, and he's came in for a second tenure as Celtic caretaker manager up until the end of the season. So at least he's got a clear mandate. Win his league, please do. Okay, but he knows what the aims are. The steps forward that Martin O'Neill achieved with Celtic earlier on this season, it seems like we've completely regressed. We were like 9 points, I think, ahead of Rangers. We were level on points with Hearts with maybe a game in hand. And yeah, in fact, that's correct. That's accurate. And now we're 6 points behind Hearts, and we're now being pegged back on level now with Rangers. So it's very much back to square one, but there's been a lot of drama so far this season. I just want to kind of, first off, good to see you. I like the shirt that you're wearing. I've seen that on the internet before, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone wear it. Can you talk about it? When did you get it?
Probably picked up about 2 years ago. It's a nondescript football / Irish football kind of shirt. Obviously made by O'Neill's, so it's a legit item in that sense. Just it's nondescript, but obviously it's got connotations of green and white hoops, gold trim on it, Celtic badge and whatnot. So it's fitting for the tone of Celtic overall, and it's just one of those times I was looking for random football jerseys at the time, and I was a wee bit bored with the modern shirts a few years ago. Kind of still am. Obviously, me and yourself got a bit of a collection. You a lot more so than I do. But I was looking for
I've calmed down. I've not bought anything in a long time.
Likewise, I'm probably about a year since the last thing I properly bought. But I just felt like something new, something a bit different, something reasonably cheap. I think I picked up for like £30. But it wasn't going to break the bank like the OG stuff that ends up costing you 80, 90, 100 or more. So it was something different, something fresh to put in my wardrobe. And here we are.
Okay. Right, so to matters at hand, Nancy, what was your immediate thoughts whenever you first heard it? Where were you? I was sorry for I ask a question and I start talking over you. I was actually in the car driving home. My dad phoned me and he says, "I've heard the news about Nancy. Is it true?" I'm like, "I don't know." He said, "Apparently he's been sacked. I've been told about it on WhatsApp." And my dad gets a lot of messages about like Celtic rumours and stuff like that on WhatsApp. I'm like, "Don't fall for that. It's a load of shit." So I'm like, "I don't know. I'll stuck on the radio." And then 5 minutes, and then I heard it in TalkSport. And then he phones me back. He's like, "Aye, it's been confirmed." Oh my God, I was celebrating. In the car. It was a dangerous drive home. But aye, where were you when you heard the news, and what was your immediate thoughts?
I'd actually finished work at the time. I'd frantically been refreshing all day yesterday, all morning, trying to find out some news. And I actually posted on one of the forums that, if it hadn't happened by 10:30 yesterday, it wasn't going to happen, because you kind of assume that the crunch talks would have happened over the weekend. They weren't going to let this sit and let Nancy sit over the whole Sunday and not talk to him about it. So, I mean, the anger amongst the fans was so much for the last few weeks. It was clearly playing on Nancy. You could see that in his press conference before the game as well. It would have been torture and cruel not to have discussed it with him over the weekend. So for me, I gave myself the deadline of 10:30 yesterday morning, that if it hadn't been announced, to me that meant that they'd spoken about it over the weekend, and they decided to do what Celtic do best, which is piss off the Celtic fans as much as they possibly can. So by 10:30, 11 o'clock-ish, I'd kind of stopped refreshing the website, stopped refreshing Twitter, gave up with the idea of it, and I'd actually finished work when the news kind of started breaking through, and we've seen stuff earlier that day, rumours and stuff, but all of a sudden, I think it was our man Daz in the group chat posted the image of the letter that I guess goes to the stock exchange.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I didn't realize. I knew that we had to do that for boards changes. I wasn't fully clued up if we had to do that for managerial changes, but obviously,
seemingly so. Yeah, that's something that's always been brought up for years, and it feels like some people use it in some sort of defence of why the club would not just announce a new signing of a player on a Saturday night sort of thing when we all knew that the guy was in for a medical on the Friday afternoon. It's like, why are you waiting until Monday? And people would always use that kind of, we can't announce anything unless the stock market's open because we're a PLC, which half makes sense and half doesn't, because I'm pretty damn sure, without giving an example, I'm pretty damn sure we have announced signings of players when the stock market's been closed, be that in the evenings, be it at the weekend, be it bank holidays or whenever it was. I'm pretty damn sure we've done it before. So I'm surprised that it actually needed to be written in that kind of way. That's the WhatsApp image that we all saw yesterday. And I think within about 5 minutes of the scene that had been announced that he'd left the position. But from what I'm led to believe, absolutely no expert in company house matters and boardroom stuff. Seemingly, if it's something that could affect the share price, basically, they do need to announce it. So, yeah, a managerial appointment of that size, although it's not boardroom related, yeah, okay, that would affect a share price of the company, I guess. Mm-hmm. A wee bit different from the example I put in one of the chats of, if Tesco or, a retail company wanted to sack a random member of staff, they don't wait until a Monday morning at 9 a.m. just because they have to tell Tesco's supermarkets, stock exchange kind of people, they would just sack you at the weekend if you were caught stealing. So, turns out it's a wee bit more different when it comes to football manager firms.
Back to Celtic. Right. See, actually, this is probably really inconsequential and irrelevant, but the day before he was sacked on the Sunday, is this the day after the Glasgow Derby defeat at Parkhead, which we will get into. There was pictures of Nancy walking about and what appeared to be in Luss. It just looked kind of like there was a photo of him sitting at a desk in a hotel lobby, and then there was another photo of a Rangers fan seemingly taking a picture with him on the kind of the dock kind of thing at Luss, and it just seemed like he was just told to go out for a wee wander, and we're going to have a talk about what you've done, and we'll get back to you. And Luss is quite a nice place, but he must have felt like a lonely individual on that trip, whether he went by himself or whether he went with his family. But look, he came here, he was gone. It's so quick. It's been over before you really know it. 8 games. Sorry, were you going to say something about Luss?
Yeah, well, not Luss itself, just that kind of moment that if you listen to Martin O'Neill yesterday, he almost does the I had a phone call from Dermot, I had 10 minutes to decide thing again, like he did that 2 months ago when he took the job. I don't believe it's been quite, maybe the first time, maybe it was a bit short, quick timely. I don't believe it's quite as quick as would have been this weekend. I reckon Martin O'Neill's been sounded out at least a week ago. They would have known.
He must have been on standby.
Yeah, surely. I mean, he would have. The club knew the pressure, and they knew fine well if we got beat against Rangers, they're going to have to do something, or they really would be purposely sabotaging the club to spite the fans. So they must have been sounding out Martin O'Neill last week. Obviously, there's speculation on Thursday, Friday that he was cancelling talks and appearances on Friday night, but then still keeping some on Sunday and Monday. So there's a bit of a rumour mill going around the last few days. So when it comes to yesterday, and Nancy being, was it in Fort William he was pictured at that hotel at the desk, I think it was, and then coming down to Luss, you probably imagine that Nancy's probably been told on the Sunday, time's up. Because you'd also imagine that the players would have probably been in training or at least at Lennoxtown, doing a debrief of the game before. So you imagine the players would have been doing something, and Nancy's probably been told, just go have a day to yourself. It's done. And then obviously we know they need to announce stuff when things open up. So yeah, it is what it is.
Well, I guess we will get into the terms of Martin O'Neill's return. Maybe promises that have been made to him, expectations, that sort of thing. But I guess we can't really go any further without talking more in detail about Nancy. Where did it all go wrong for Nancy? So obviously that opens up the blame game. Now, I fully do believe that he was kind of stitched up by the board, and he was given, well, you could say an impossible task, but the board would have known what his style was. And it's unignorable that we have built our success historically on 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, and then most recently 4-3-3. So to bring a man in who has the 3-4-3 style, everybody knows that that's going to take a long time to implement. You only need to look as far as Manchester to see how difficult it's been for Amorim to implement that style. And then ironically, he changes it to a back four, and then he gets sacked within a week after doing so, after like caving in to the demands of the media and the fans. So everybody knew it was going to be a massive cultural change, a cultural change in order to go back to the back three for Celtic, which is just something that we haven't really seen. So he did that, and obviously it went pear-shaped. So who takes blame? Like, Nancy obviously has to shoulder it. The buck stops with him. This was his chance to make it in Europe. I can't really think of many high-profile managers who went from the MLS to the UK to Europe. You obviously get Jesse Marsh, who went to Leeds, and eventually he gets sacked. This was a massive, massive opportunity for Nancy, and he surely he'd done his homework. He saw this opportunity, and surely he understood the gravity of the task at hand. But he just, in hindsight, he went with the wrong approach. But even at the start, we were debating as Celtic fans, do you go for broke right away? And people were saying, fuck it, yes, look at that lineup, he's going for the three at the back, and Nancy all the way, and people were saying, oh, he's brave to do that, and other people were saying, no, come on, you're detached from reality. Think of what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to implement, and the games that you've got coming up in December is a critical period in the fixture list. So to go for broke, to make those changes right away, for me, that was one of the deciding factors. And we were told beforehand that he was an adaptable manager. What did he adapt to? He adapted to the weather with the amount of thermals that he was wearing. But apart from that, his tactics didn't show any adaptation for me. There were so many things that annoyed me about him. His press conferences, just the way that he would talk. I found it so difficult to connect with him. I was screaming, make me like you. I want to buy into you. I want to feel that connection, and I was just struggling to buy into it. He could talk for 5 minutes, and you could ask me, what did he say? And I would struggle to surmise it. I felt like I was tuning out. It felt like back in school when you're a wee guy and the teacher's talking to you, and you're like, I'm not really listening to this at all. It kind of felt like that. I just struggled. I'm like, is it me? Is there something I'm doing wrong where I'm not listening to this guy? Or is it just so difficult to listen to? And I felt, if I'm struggling and I'm really, really trying to understand what you're saying, how do the players feel? So I guess focusing on Nancy's culpability in all of this, where do you start?
Paul Tisdale is probably where you start. I think the appointment of Nancy, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think a lot of us said before he even played his first game that it was a mental appointment, considering he plays the 3-4-3 or whatever pretend version of 3-4-3 he wants to pretend it to be. We questioned it on the group chats, we questioned it on the forums. I don't think I questioned it on here. As I joked about before we went live, the last time I was on was actually Martin O'Neill getting announced the first time. And since I've last been on the podcast, it doesn't feel that long ago, but we have went through, an entire interim manager, permanent manager, back to Martin O'Neill again. So it's not a lot of time. But in that early stages, we did all say that, are we sure this is going to work? And as you say, when he comes into the first game and he plays the 3-4-3, I'll admit I was on the side of fuck it, he's going for it. Good on you, son. You're giving it a try. You're sticking by your guns. I'm intrigued to see how it works out. It fucking didn't.
Can I ask you, McGinty, before you go any further, a comment here from one of the guys. I couldn't bear to listen to Nancy, but I listened to the one on Friday last night, and it was wild. The guy's arrogance was his undoing.
Yep.
That's one accusation that has been thrown at Nancy. Would you use the term arrogant?
I would.
Agree with that?
I would, but not necessarily in just what he was saying in his press conferences, in his actions as well. The point for me, you're asking, like, what was the kind of like the breaking point, or when did you know that it wasn't going to be sort of thing? It was the cup final for me. That was it. He had his first two games. He was sticking by the 3-4-3 for those two games, and for the first one, you're like, good on you, fair enough, go for it. The second one against Roma, you're like, okay, it didn't quite work, but it's Roma. You're thinking about it. You're looking at the whole situation. You're thinking, right, is it changing too much for the sake of it? Is he going to learn the mistakes that he's making? And I tried to find the quotes yesterday, but I couldn't find them. And maybe I'm misremembering what he had said before the cup final about. I think there was a press conference, but there's something before the press conference where he had made comments about how he'd had meetings with the players and they discussed kind of like maybe there was too much change happening one time and he was going to rein it back. I can't find these quotes, so maybe I'm misremembering what he said, but it felt like me at the time that he was going to go into the cup final and play probably a four at the back. And we looked at the team sheet for the cup final, if you remember, and we all looked at it and went, fuck, that's the four at the back, because what is it? Ralston, Trusty, Scales, and KT. And you look at it and you're thinking, okay, he's doing something. And then the lineup, the kickoff happens and you look at how it's all lined up on the pitch and you're like, nah, he's sticking to a 3-4-3 with Ralston at right centre back. That game there was the nail in the coffin for me, which is only game 3. But the fact that we lost that game and he had been so stubborn, so arrogant in his ways, he wasn't willing to change, and he never changed one bit. He will say that he adapted and he'll say that he changed things all the time. But as our good man James points out often, he changed it by basically pulling names out of a hat for substitutes and throwing them on. I mean, at points he was taking McCowan off at left wing back to throw on James Forrest, who ended up playing at centre mid. None of it made any fucking sense at all. He wasn't changing it. He was absolute in telling us that it's not his formation, it's not the system. The players just need to learn the process. I'm sorry, it was the system. It was the formation. In so many ways, we're going to talk about it so much. I mean, we're 20 minutes in now. We're going to keep talking about this till we're blue in the face, until Martin O'Neill wins a couple of games and we completely move on. But this guy was set in his ways of playing Anthony Ralston at right centre back, Yang at right wing back, and Luke McCowan at left wing back and shit like that. That he couldn't see the fucking issues and just put players, even if he's going to stick to his 3-4-3 or whatever nonsense it is, he couldn't even just put the players in the most appropriate positions. Now, Yang is a right wing back, not the worst idea. Winger just pulling back a little bit because you're going to want him to push forward. Yeah, okay. But he's not got a defensive bone in his body. Ralston at right centre back, mental logic. McCowan at left wing back, mental. What was the other one? James Forrest at centre mid, mental. Only playing Trusty as the only centre back, mental.
See, if I'm being completely honest, like the one maybe bone of contention I would pick there is, see, for the wing backs, I think one question I was going to ask later on was, did Nancy improve any of the players? Now, I'm not entirely sure if he improved Yang, but I think Yang is one of the few players who there'll be a lot of there'll be a full autopsy on this Nancy reign. Okay, Celtic fans will look back on this month in years to come, decades to come, and they'll laugh about it, joke about it. We'll be serious about it as well. There will be a lot of like soul searching for the players to be done. But I think Yang might have been one of the few players who could maybe hold his head up high. But in terms of the point that you made, I think out of all the wingers that we've got, like Forrest, Jota, Taneke, Balikwisha, whoever else we've got, I think Yang is one of the more kind of keen ones to try to track back. Whether he's good at defending or not, I think he busts a gut and he's got pace. I think he does have that kind of engine on him. Although I'm not kind of disagreeing with your overall sentiment, I would say that Yang was one of maybe the few players suited for the wing back position who could actually try and help out his fellow centre back, if you want.
I would argue not suited, but agree he's one of the few players that over the piece of the Nancy reign, as you say, he can hold his head high. Because love him or hate him, think that he's a good player or not, Yang at least is always trying, and he's kind of like Mikey Johnson in that way. You know he's trying, and you know he's got some sort of skills that he's obviously shown in training, and you know that he can. Every so often he brings up a run of 3 or 4 games and he looks fantastic, usually when his girlfriend's over. Which, by the way, is usually about Valentine's Day, so expect in about 6 weeks' time he's probably going to be good stuff again. But I think maybe it's more that he was one of the few people in a reasonably sensible position, and he was consistently all right. That makes him look the better of the bad bunch. But I wouldn't go out my way to say that he had improved under Nancy or excelled or anything extravagant. I think overall, I mean,
you've given a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
But without focusing too much on Yang, in terms of where it went wrong for Nancy, so obviously we can talk about Tisdale bringing him in. I know Tisdale's been gone, rightfully so. Everybody will be happy to see the back of him. So from like an off-field perspective, you've got the board employing Tisdale recommending Nancy. But in terms of the coaching staff and the players as well, is there any personnel that jump out at you? So I think maybe people like Kasper Schmeichel, Johnny Kenny, those two might be one of the main culprits who will be on the tips of people's tongues in terms of like, for example, if you were to be a manager coming in a new club and you're already struggling, regardless of your system, which Nancy obviously didn't help himself with, you don't want to be relying on people like Johnny Kenny to keep you in a job. Now, he missed chances, but there was other people as well. But it probably doesn't help when you've got people like that. And then we've got injuries as well. You've got Cam Carter-Vickers out, AJ out, Jota out, and Ian Atchell, who he just made a chocolate. This guy, for as good as what his first touch is. And then you've got AFCON as well, taking away Taneke, not so much Balikwisha. He doesn't really get a game anyway. A lot of things did conspire against Nancy. It never helped him.
It never helped him, but he never helped himself. Now, yeah, if you had AJ, I would assume, oh my God, I would assume he would play AJ as a right wing back, for fuck's sake. He's actually, of all the players, probably the only one fitted to play a unique position in such a unique system. But I dare say he probably would have played him at right centre back. Because Alistair Johnston is a great fullback. He's good defensively, but he's very good going forward. So playing him at right wing back would make a shitload of sense. So yeah, if you had AJ, maybe it would be a bit different, but he would still have had Anthony Ralston at right centre back. And yes, he didn't have Carter-Vickers, but he did have Simpson Pusey. Yeah, he's away now. Yeah, 3 managers deem him not good enough. Fair enough. He did have Murray and he did have Scales all sit on the bench for multiple games whilst he only played one centre-back in Trusty. He was set on playing Anthony Ralston, a full-back at right centre-back, in the same way that he was set on playing Kim Tierney at left centre-back. This was the Nancy system. He had the chance to play multiple centre-backs. I mean, especially later on, he should have been thinking, right, maybe I do need to just put 3 actual centre-backs at the 3 back 3 position.
Do you think that was a balance of getting a right-footed defender, or do you think he genuinely hated Scales?
not necessarily. I don't think he hated Scales. I think maybe there's possible also when Scales kind of made those comments of what the fuck are we doing? I don't know, sort of thing. Maybe that pissed him off a little bit, and maybe saw him be dropped. But he did come back into the team, and I don't want to get bogged down into this Brendan Rodgers argument of right-footed for the right side sort of thing. You had 3 centre backs sitting on the bench whilst you're playing 1 centre back and a back 3. It made no sense that. I mean, fair enough, Keane Tierney at the left side to a degree, but it made no sense why you would continuously persist with Anthony Ralston, who, every credit in the world to Anthony Ralston, he plays with the most passion and heart that you could find in a player, but he ain't a fucking centre back, and he was getting shredded. And the guy must have, the whole lot of them, you've seen it McCowan as well, but Ralston must have been absolutely, embarrassed by what he's been asked to do. Not embarrassed by his own performances, because he's limited in his ability, and we all know that, but he's a good, honest worker. But he's been asked to play centre-back, a position he's not favoured to at all. He's getting left massive open space because Yang's playing wing-back further up, overlapping with the strikers and shit. That space was there for everybody to see, and nobody was helping Ralston out, partly because on the rest of his defenders were out doing other things, but the manager wasn't helping him. The manager left him out there stranded. The manager put that in position and left it there and let it happen time after time after time. That's on the manager, not Ralston. Ralston's, we know he's not the greatest, but that's not on Ralston being left in a shit position on a shit pitch, in a shit system, in a shit formation, and asked to do shit. That's on Nancy. Nancy had a chance to change all that. He absolutely could have stuck with a 3-4-3, but you could have put actual defenders in the back 3. You could have asked Ralston to play right wing back, because let's be honest, Ralston can get forward and ping it across. He could have played right wing back. Sorry.
No, not at all. Don't apologise. I guess my impression is that the system was never going to work, and it just left you far too vulnerable for the ball in behind. One of the best situations or the examples of that was whenever Colby Donovan got done in the cup final for the 3rd goal by St Mirren. I guess in play, that's another kind of factor of the Nancy era, is that we could look really good in the first half, but in the second half, don't expect the same Celtic to come out, or at least expect the opposition to make changes and then watch what Nancy doesn't do in a football game. And that's one of the, I know that you're a big fan of Wim Jansen, and one of the things I always remember you speaking about Wim Jansen was the tactical changes that he was able to implement during games, and that was one of the kind of the abiding memories that you've got of his kind of tenure for that season with Celtic. But Nancy's the complete opposite. I don't feel that Nancy was able to implement any changes. Now, I'm in terms of like tactical knowledge, I'm a layman in that regard. Okay, I don't have, I just like see what I see, so Nancy will have a far more knowledgeable understanding.
Not necessarily.
At least he did do it in America anyway, but he just failed to implement it over here. But when I was watching the games under Celtic for the Nancy tenure, I just wasn't seeing us being able to combat the changes that the opposition managers were making. Like if we go back to the very first game, Celtic against Hearts at Parkhead, and we lost 2-1. Now, we could have been 3-0 up by half-time, but Hearts came back into it and ended up winning 2-1, and we failed to make the necessary changes to combat whatever Derek McInnes implemented in the game. And then fast forward to the final game of his tenure, again 1-0 up at half-time against Rangers at Parkhead. Should have been more, but Rangers make one substitution. I saw Diomande warming up at half-time, and I texted the guys in the group chat, Diomande's coming on. So off comes fucking Asgard, who wasn't really pressing much. And Diomande, you know what he does. And it was just like a kind of solid body in the midfield, kind of broke things up. And he's able to carry the ball. He's able to hold people off. And for as limited as what he is, he nullified what we were doing, and we never had an answer to it. And that's frustrating. You've got 45 minutes at some point in that, you need to recognise what's happening and think on your feet, make changes. And Nancy couldn't do that. That's over 8 games. 8 games. We only won two of them. It's just bewildering. So that's one thing which really you have to lay the blame at Nancy's feet for the in-game management. He wasn't up to scratch. Scottish managers were outsmarting him, and that is embarrassing.
100%, because as we said earlier, James has this thing about picking names at the hat, and it seems like that's exactly what he was doing. Nancy says he was making changes. Nancy says it's not the system, he's adaptable and all the rest of it. All he did was change the random players in the midfield and front line. See if he truly wanted to change it. And as you said, against Rangers at the weekend there, that was game 8. He had 7 other games, 5 other defeats. Let's remember that. It's only 2 wins and 6 defeats. There's no draws in there. And he couldn't ever figure out that leaving Trusty as the only centre-back was exposing Ralston, exposing Yang, exposing Luke McCowan. It left us wide open completely. And some people will argue, we didn't defend as a one centre-back because, when we're out of possession, other people came back eventually. Yep, if you want to take a still image of a random moment in a counter-attack, it can look like that. However, you don't just defend at the moment that the opposition get into your final third. You defend it every second of the game. Even when you're in attack, you have to be defensively minded because that counter can happen in a flash. And to leave Trusty there all on his own, mental madness. The balls were always getting pinged to our right side because they knew that ball through the channel going beyond Ralston. They knew Ralston wasn't coping with it. And that is not a slight on Ralston because we've been through this before so many times over the years with Ralston. It's just the level of player he is. It just is what it is. He plays with all his heart, but opponents know that ball getting pinged there. And that was Aaron doing so many times under Nancy. If Nancy truly wanted to change it, and I say that he actually adapted to the system, he legitimately would have, especially in the Rangers game there, as you're winning 1-0 at half time, and you know what's about to happen because it happened in every other defeat that we had. You would have taken Ralston off for centre-back and decided, no, we're going to pull 2 centre-backs and get 2 centre-backs to sit rather than just Trusty. And you would have shored up the defence a little bit. He never once did that. Never once. As I said, McCowan was coming off along with who else? Who came off? It wasn't the Rangers game, it was the game before. I think it was Luke McCowan and Yang came off, but he left Ralston on when Ralston was getting, he's absolutely getting mauled by the opponents, and he leaves Ralston on there for some reason. Again, whilst he's got other defenders on the bench, and he's making random subs throughout the rest of the pitch. It's like, what you doing? As you said, Yang, one of the better players, gets subbed off while Ralston stays on. Mental. I feel like I'm pure picking out on Ralston, and I don't mean that against the guy. It's nothing personal sort of thing.
Right. And smell the glove. Basically, we've wasted a cup final, a 9-point lead over Rangers, players' confidence shot, and millions paying this grifter off, all in 33 days, and Michael Nicholson is still in a job. Well surmised. Can I get your honest answer on this one? How different could this have been if we had a competent centre forward playing? Maybe not even a fit Iheanacho. How much of a difference would that have made? Because if I was to kind of remind you of some of the games like Celtic and Hearts, the opening one, as I said in the first half, we could have been out of sight by that point. Maybe not so much the Roma or the St Mirren game. Dundee United, I think, were very prolific in the first half in Tannadice. Celtic and Aberdeen, well, we won that game anyway, but in the first half we were really prolific. Motherwell, we just never get a sniff. The Rangers game first half, we were all over them, but just weren't putting the chances away. So that's what the Hearts game, Dundee United game, and the Rangers game. So 3 particular games there where, we could have put points on the board. Arguably, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, if we had a competent centre forward. Where do you stand on that one? Because if we're being honest, we're very good at highlighting the flaws of the Nancy tactical setup. but he was playing high stakes and he was creating chances in particular games, in particular moments.
He was. I mean, if you take the first game against Hearts, for the first few games, people were like, oh, but we had a great 20 minutes against Hearts. And then it built up to, oh, we had a great first half. We have to remember a game of football is 90 minutes, or 97 minutes, whatever it is nowadays. It's a game of 2 halves, it's a game of 90 minutes. You need to show up for all of it, or at least the vast majority of it. Showing up for one half is never going to win you a game of football. If we had a fit, competent striker, if we had a Gary Hooper, Lee Griffiths, a Larson, whoever, Dembele, pick any competent striker, yeah, we would have scored a few more goals. However, we were conceding 2 goals, 3 goals, 4 goals in games. We're getting beat by multiple goals in games. You wouldn't just need a competent striker. We would have needed a consistency of a striker that has not been seen even since Larson done his 53 goals in a season. You're talking about a striker who would have had to...
I'm talking like Ali Griffiths and Gary Hooper.
If you take Kenny out and put Hooper in, I'm not saying his specific style, just his goal return sort of thing, you would have needed Hooper to have scored 2 goals in the last 8 games every game. You would have literally needed him to score probably 10 to 12 to 14 goals under Nancy. That's a return rate that is pretty fucking high. Like, out of our reach sort of high. That's an unbelievable level to get that kind of return rate from a striker. That is consistency beyond. I think it would have turned a couple of the defeats into draws, maybe seen a game out, maybe, but I think the deficiencies at the back were never going to be rectified. They were always going to be there. And the issues, all we would have done would just drag this out and prolong the pain and agony. My further evidence of proof to that, and I'll be as brief as I can, look at what he done with Crewe before he came here. Look at his last 8 games. I think it's something similar, like 5 defeats in his last 8 games at Crewe. Over the course of the last 27 games, I think I counted back, he'd only got 10 wins in 27 of his last games at Crewe. This isn't like Nancy always done this, trust the process, give me time, blah, blah, it'll all come, and they're getting closer every day, it'll click, it'll come. People defended him to yesterday, people defended him saying he never had his pre-season and all this fucking nonsense. He had 3 pre-seasons at Columbus Crew. He had 3 whole seasons at Crew. And yet, even in his last season, the last 27 games, he's still only winning 10 of them. That's the consistency. That's the level of Wilfred Nancy. He was never going to turn around and get a run of 15, 16, 21 games winning, let alone unbeaten. He was never going to find that consistency. He could have went and won 3 or 4 games in a row. All it would have done was kick the can down until we got beat another 4 out of 5 times.
I guess the kind of point that I was driving at is, although I'm very much Nancy out, I'm glad he's gone, I just think that if he had a competent striker playing for Celtic, it would have given him more of a fighting chance.
Possible.
For some of these games.
Yeah, possible, but again, I think it would just be delaying the inevitable. I think
I agree. Better opposition would have found us out, absolutely. Yeah. And what that probably would have led to is us going the full distance in the league and then losing out. So we would have came to the worst conclusion. But right now, what's been perfect is that he's been so catastrophically bad that he's forced the board's hand, and that's why we find ourselves in the situation. So it's been perfect in the fact that he was not just bad, he was really, really bad. And that's why we now have a chance to kind of wipe the slate clean and go again. One other question I wanted to ask you. Now, it's about the kind of the social media aspect of Celtic fans. There was some accusations. I think we've got Daza in the building. Daza, how you doing?
Not bad. How are you? Can you hear me?
Man. Yeah,
good.
Man.
Thank you for joining us. Before I get your thoughts, Daza, on the rigmarole that we've just witnessed, McGinty, one question I wanted to ask you was, not all Celtic fans were in agreement. Obviously, people had different kind of breaking points with Nancy, but there was a lot of bickering between Celtic fans online, especially about not backing the manager, and given him being given like horrific abuse and stuff like that. I felt that wasn't the case. I felt that the majority of Celtic fans who were against Nancy, they were justifying why they were against him, why they wanted him out. And now I thought where it maybe went over the line was at the Dundee United game, when I think somebody threw a projectile at him at full time when he was walking back up the tunnel. And obviously there was a chance of Nancy get to fuck, which it's not palatable hearing that, but I was kind of on the fence with that. I wouldn't shout it myself, but I understood why they were doing it, because they were desperate at that point. That was the fourth defeat, the Dundee United game, and at that point I was desperate for him to leave, and people get carried away with emotions and they were shouting that. But I think on the whole, I thought that the Celtic fans kind of carried themselves reasonably well with the whole Nancy affair. They were desperate for him to leave, but I don't think it turned toxic. What's your opinion on that?
It was getting there. It was definitely getting there. And as you said, online, there was a lot of bickering and a lot of twos and throws. Directed towards Nancy, I don't think there was as much as is probably going to get made out to be. Obviously, throwing projectiles, any physical violence, absolutely not on, guys. Don't do it. It's not cool at all. The chance of Nancy get to fuck, I'm absolutely all right with that, especially when it's on the back of 4 straight defeats. That's unheard of in Celtic history, not just modern history, but you're going back 50, 60 years of history. That's unacceptable of the highest order to go 4 games defeated. Unless, we're in the midst of like back-to-back Barcelona games against Man City and a cup final against Rangers or something in their prime, and a mad sequence of games like that. Getting beat 4 times in a row is never acceptable. So when it comes to Nancy get to fucking after that game, I'm okay with it. I can see it. I'm absolutely fine with it. Mm-hmm. If they chanted that maybe on the second or even in the cup final, I would have felt a bit more like, come on, leave them out, guys. But no, I think it was justified. Obviously, projectiles and throw thing, not. I think after that, though, you didn't really hear the Nancy get to fuck chants really that much. They were there, but they weren't as ferocious. It wasn't as toxic as going to be made out. People knew after game 4, they knew he was only getting kept there because the board didn't want to admit that they fucked up that quickly. That was the board sticking out, and I think the board and the entity of what we call the board, obviously the individuals themselves collectively, the anger was starting to get pointed again back at them, and I think that was correct. And I think it was correct that Paul Tisdale does leave at the same time, because he was the man who brought Nancy to the table, to the club, and the club overall took the lazy, easy option, trusted a guy who has no fucking experience really at any great level, and they backed Tisdale and Nancy, and it blew up in their faces so much that Tisdale had to go as well. So I think the anger started going in that direction because they knew the fuck up wasn't. Nancy was out of his depth. He was a bit arrogant. He was stubborn as hell. But you hire a guy who's wedded to a 3-4-3 and never going to change. You're going to get what you're going to get at that stage. You blame the people who were stupid enough not to realise that in the first place. When we all sat online before he even officially signed for Celtic, we all sat and went, is this going to work? Yet nobody at Celtic questioned that. They just took Tisdale's word. So, yeah.
Dazza, welcome to the show. Firstly, a happy 15th birthday. I hope you enjoyed that.
It was amazing there. Big 15 there.
Thanks for joining us, mate. Look, we've obviously been talking about the obvious topic about Nancy. You not only do you have a season ticket for Celtic, but you actually go to quite a few away games whenever you get the chance. I think you were at the Livy game and the Motherwell game, two of several anyway. So just to kind of get your thoughts, what was your tipping point? When at that point did you realise Nancy has to go, and where did it go wrong for you?
Right, so as you probably know, I'm a lot more patient than a lot of people. I'm hoping for it. Forever the optimist, hoping for the best. the Livingston game to go the way we did, but we thought back and right, okay, if we're going, if we're Aberdeen game, right, we'll start for the Aberdeen game. And you're like, I was offshore and I was watching it, and then I was thinking to myself, wait a minute here, one. Obviously, when you're watching it online, you get the notification, one each. Before now, you see it, and you're like, slam my iPad down. I was like, this is a nightmare. But then I looked at it and thought, wait a minute here, we've absolutely battered. We've not, I mean, we've battered these. Then, but that was still a red flag. Matt, right, let him get his players in. The ultimate for me was Saturday. I was raging at Motherwell leaving the stadium. I was like, but then I didn't think he was leaving. I thought he was going to be here for a long time. As I said, the unforgivable thing for me against Rangers was they all seemed like they changed it at half time. We never adapted to that and we ended up losing the game by stupidity. Whereas I don't know if you watched Martin O'Neill's press conference today, what he said was absolutely right. If we got the second goal or the third goal in any one of the games that we'd lost in, like especially Dundee United, we would have been out comfortable winners in every game. So that way, you're like, right, fine. So to answer your question for the Graph and a Tangent, to answer your question, Saturday was unforgivable for me. The rest you can see was a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Very patient man. McGinty, this is now 2 managers that the players have let down. So obviously we've spoken enough about Nancy, but you've got people talking about the system, but there's also the individual errors debate. But Nancy aside, the players let down Brendan Rodgers as well. And he obviously takes some blame as well. But how do the players kind of pick themselves up now? Like if ever players needed a break, I think they need a break right now after what they've been through. Not that I sympathise with them, but just that mentally, not so much even physically, but mentally, they must have been through the ringer. And it's great that Martin O'Neill's now came in. And obviously he'll have a plan of how to galvanise them to regroup them. But one of the things is that somebody said in the comments, they must be so demoralised. So I guess one thing is the players letting down 2 managers and not playing as best as what they can. How do they go again? Because there's 18 games to go in the domestic season, and obviously we've got our sights set in the league. It's very much achievable, but we need a full turnaround.
I think you put a lot of trust in Martin O'Neill here, and rightly so. He's done it once already this season. Without going into the Brendan Rodgers first part of the season, obviously we've done that to death over the course of the season as well. But Martin O'Neill came in then and he picked them all up. He won 7 out of 8 games, was it? And then, Nancy happens. He needs to do it again, but he now needs to do it in a way that's an even bigger kind of sympathetic other figure to them, sort of thing. I think the impression I got when he was ending his first interim spell, you could see the emotion from the players and the staff, that they really felt connected to what Martin had done for them, making them believe, giving them a reason to play and play fairly well in without being great. Obviously, again, players are not the greatest this season, but they believed in themselves. They had confidence in themselves. Rodgers didn't help the situation, playing these eco games and these politics with the board. I'm not going to get into it. I've done that one to death, obviously. But Martin's probably going to come back and do something similar where he's just going to need to simplify everything. He's got the rest of this week. Far from me to tell anybody how you two do team bonding, but I'd imagine at some point this week there's going to be some sort of light-hearted moment of just trying to get the guys to relax.
Connect 4 tournament.
Let's get playing. He has to do something to get them to laugh, get them to relax a little bit, but also then get them straight into the training ground in a way that says, whatever you did the last time, you are good enough. You are good players. Work as a team, as a unit. Again, simplify it all back down to what he did last time. The 4-2-3-1 or whatever it is he's going to play. Players in the right position. Give them belief. Put an arm around them all. And it's funny, ironic, whatever you want to say. I mean, people talked about the first 3 games for Nancy being a clusterfuck of 3 games to run into, Hearts, Roma, and a cup final. Martin's probably got quite an easy 3 games. At home to Dundee United, we hopefully a refreshed squad who's mentally prepared. A Falkirk game, okay, it's away, but no disrespect to Falkirk, you hope you get something there. And then obviously the cup game against Talbot. Without being, entitled, you expect that should be a win for us. So he's got probably a run of games that's possibly going to work in his favour and the players' favours. And you just need Martin to do what Martin did last time, just 10 times more.
Aye, well, it's a good point that you make. On paper, they're not stressful fixtures. Aye, so another kind of responsibility for January is the January transfer window. Daza, I'm sure everybody's got their own opinion, so what's yours? What's the kind of the emergency positions that we need to strengthen on? Can I start with you on goalkeeper? Do we have, is Schmeichel or the Finnish guy, one of them, are you happy with them? Would you bring in a new goalkeeper? It's not that drastic.
The goalkeeper isn't a priority, if I'm being honest. I think Sinisalo's is adequate. I think Kasper Schmeichel's just had a howler and lost a bit of confidence lately. But I'm not going to join the pylon, the Schmeichel pylon. A striker is the number 1 priority. And the very fact that we've not had one raised up to come in on the 1st of January has annoyed me. You know what I mean? Because what's people doing? And they're 95s inside the corridors of Celtic Park. What are they doing? There should be people there saying, right, can we speak to X, Y, and Z and get them in the door for as soon as that transfer window opens. But the very fact that we're now sitting here in weekend, here's a Doug, a weekend, we've still not got any. I've not even heard a rumour. You know what I mean? I've not even heard somebody saying, oh, by the way, Fenway's a link. Do you know what I mean? I've not even heard a decent rumour. And that's annoying me.
That's what happens when your head of recruitment goes on a fucking holiday to sunnier climates at the middle of December, apparently. People joked about it. Oh, he must have done some of the work. And yeah, realistically, you would think, head of recruitment is always doing some sort of transfer work. And the season that we're in, exactly, Daz, you have somebody lined up. A striker is so important. You have a striker lined up for the 1st of January. Nah, nothing. What has been going on in that sense? It's nuts.
And would you guys, I know that we'll talk more about positions and things like that for strengthening, but do you think where we're at right now and maybe the desperation that loan signings might be the way forward to try and fix this season?
I mean, what loan signing you're going to get? Somebody that's on the periphery of a bigger club?
Yeah.
I suppose, but we should be doing things now for next season. And now, what was it? One transfer window, Angie's transfer window, first one set is up for 5 years.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And even with Mark McNeil in the building, it will usually be last day loans because Celtic do have a behaviour for this. They've got a track record for it.
See, the thing is, though, was my faith, again, blind faith, was shit show between the fans and the board. Do you know what I mean? It's been an absolute shit show. And I thought, right, the board are going to need to be proactive in this window. You know what I mean? And they're not.
But they're not. And that's what really gets frustrating, is that they're not. And we're all sitting here saying the exact same things. Some of us a lot calmer, and I applaud you, Dazza, for that. Some of us a little bit more hot-headed, James. But it's the same thing, and if we can all sit here and see it, the same way that we all questioned Nancy before he played his first game, is this the right thing? Has somebody asked Nancy the question of, are you able to adapt your system short term? Because we don't have the players for your 3-4-3. They seem to not do these, prepare themselves situations and get the players prepared. As you said, as Angie's first season set us up for 5 years. Even in the January window, we announced, was it Maeda, Hatate, and Ideguchi, was it? Okay, Ideguchi didn't work out, but Maeda and Hatate are still here, playing vital parts. Talk about how good Hatate is all day long if you want, but they're still in the starting 11 every week, 5 years later. And they were announced before the window even opened, and yet here we are. We don't even know what's happening.
Inevitably, Martin O'Neill's going to lead some confidence back into your Hatates and that. And hopefully now we can get him up and running again. We definitely need another striker. We need another defender as well. I think midfield were all right.
It's for me, it's a striker, right winger, a defender, and then as an absolute minimum, you need those three, and then we can discuss maybe adding something else that is future proofing. But to see us through this season, those three, absolutely essential. We're not winning this league if we don't bring in those three, in my eyes.
You see the injuries have scunnered us, like AJ and Cameron Carter-Vickers now, and obviously like Jota as well. But see if like either Trusty or Scales were to pick up like a significant injury, we would be fucked. We would be fucked because you can't rely on Dane Murray. You can't rely on him, and it's such a tightrope that we're walking right now, with Cameron Carter-Vickers out. So arguably we do need to bring in another centre back. But he'll be back up. I'd be happy with Trusty and Scales to see us through till the end of the season. AJ, we can't count on AJ. We need to count him out for the rest of the season. I think he'll be back with maybe 1 or 2 months to go. But by that point, the bulk.
Did Martin O'Neill say the day that there's nobody soon?
Yeah, aye. So even Callum Osmond, we can't even rely on him. The guy who's, just played 2 games of professional football. We're really up shit creek with injuries. So I agree, a centre back, albeit backup. We brought in that right back. I don't know if he's a right sided of a 3 or whatever, but he's probably going to just take Anthony Ralston's place at right back. And even Sriracha was really coming onto a game, and I think he was becoming a bit of a fan favourite as well. But thankfully, in his place, Tierney hasn't let us down with his injuries or his fitness. Tierney has stood up well. Admittedly, doesn't have that same explosiveness, but he's been quite steady, Tierney. So I'm really happy that he's not been a shaky peg this season. So he's really stepped up in the injury of Sriracha. But centre forward, I totally agree with you guys. Centre forward, we need to bring somebody in, somebody who knows where the goal is. I don't care if it's like an older head, I was about to say Simon Murray, but I don't know if that would happen. But somebody who knows where the goal is, who's tough, who can put away some chances. And then right wing, which we've not replaced really since Kuhn left. We've been rumoured with this 20-year-old guy, Ivory Coast, is playing right now in Israel. I think he's still got a couple of weeks before he recovers from an injury. If we get him, he looks like a long-term prospect. He doesn't have impressive stats, albeit he's got pace to burn, but he's 20 years old. So ideally, we need somebody who can walk in and play right wing, because you don't want to be playing Nygren on right wing for the rest of the season.
I've not got a name for you, but yeah, I'm almost at the point of, spend 500 grand to $1 million or whatever it is on somebody who's just proven at the league level that we need it to be. So I've not got the name, but a right winger that comes in, he might be 29, 30, 31, but he's just going to come in and he's just going to do the job. a Luke McKeown equivalent of the right winger and just get on with it. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be flashy. It's probably not going to do as well in Europe, but to get us through this part of the season, we need a right winger in there that's ready to go. It can't be a project. It can't be somebody who's going to have purple patches and, you know, dips and troughs and shit. It needs to be somebody who just comes in and just makes the position their own, steady, gets on with the job.
And we've got Donetke coming back. So whether he needs a rest or not, I hope he doesn't. But you've got Donetke back at left wing. Obviously, Maida can do that role as well. But then Maida can maybe take the number 9 position ahead of Johnny Kenny. But you've got an added option there. But we're really, really short in numbers, short in quality. And Balaguisha, I don't know if he's kicked the ball yet in anger in Africa. But coming back, he's just going to go back on the bench, firmly back on the bench. The other thing that Martin O'Neill said, I don't know if you remember, the first time round as caretaker, he said that Celtic are really lacking in physicality. That was the one thing that he noticed. Dazza, is that something that you would like to see, bringing in physical players in January? Or do you think that ship has sailed?
I've not. We need to strengthen something. Do you know what I mean? We need something in. Sorry, Amy just kind of. What was the crux of the question there?
Do you think we should be bringing in some physical players like Martin O'Neill had suggested?
That's Martin O'Neill's team in it. What was his team all the way for the last time? Strong in the back, fast in the wings. Strong spine, fast in the wings. You know what I mean? So he needs that. We need physicality because we get bullied on Saturday in the second half. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As much as you said earlier, Daz, as well, that midfield probably were okay. I would agree with that, but at the same time, what you just said there as well, we could do with that aggressive physicality in the midfield. So if we can get an opportunity to grab a more dominant defensive midfielder, I would take that, and I think that would improve us. But as far as a priority is concerned, I think we've got a lot of midfielders, and if we can, get the right wing position sorted, get the back line sorted, and a striker in, I think the midfield will see us through. But it does need some sort of addressing at some point as well, because that physicality in midfield has been lacking for a few years now as well. We get overrun in games against Rangers and in Europe quite a lot. But seeing for lack of a better thing, seeing a Wanyama type again would be quite nice.
Definitely.
See the other thing about players regressing. Under Martin O'Neill, you had McGregor playing well, Hatate was playing well, and Engels was doing much better. Engels was playing a little bit more regressed, and Hatate was pushing up a little bit more, and it looked as if they knew the roles in the midfield, and they were getting plaudits, and then it just totally changed whenever Nancy came in. So those players can maybe kind of find a form again.
My problem when I know you're going back to Nancy here and what you're saying there. My problem with Nancy was he never came in adapted to what he had. Now the old saying going, you can only piss with the fuck you've got. He never came in and adapted. So he came in and tried to do his own style. And it didn't work. So what Nancy should have done, and what again was his downfall, was Nancy should have then developed his team to the way that he wanted to play, or to the way the team can play. Then in this window say that I need X, Y, and Z, and then that would have been a manager doing his manager's job, and he never managed that.
Exactly.
So therefore, that's how he had to go. So what we did, so now the window's open, we've got Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill, he said today that Sean Maloney had started identifying players that he needs to approve. And then I know I'm sort of like an overruled. We need to get them in tomorrow. I need to wake up tomorrow morning, first thing I do, open Twitter and see that we've been linked with X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? It needs to happen. We need players in the building before the weekend, and certainly before the midweek game against Falkirk.
Aye. Well, for January alone, you've got but you've got what, 2 league games, three league games. Okay, you've got Dundee United, as we said, this weekend, Falkirk midweek, and then you've got Hearts near the end of January. Hearts away in Edinburgh on the 25th. In between that, you've got 2 European games, which I couldn't give a fuck about, and you've also got Auchinleck Talbot. Are you going to them?
I'm going to Bologna, right?
The good thing about European games is that with Nancy, I had no confidence, no faith. I'd written Europa League completely out the window. We Martin back in a run of 3 games, which is quite favourable to him. We could get a victory against Utrecht. And if we get the victory against Utrecht or one against Bologna, we can get through. And the season starts to take on a different narrative if you get through to the next stage of the Europa. For me, though, look at those 3 league games you're talking about. Was it Hearts on the 25th? He needs the players in, as Dazza says, today, yesterday, tomorrow. He needs the players in now because we need to get to that Hearts game and we need to be flying. He's got 5 games before then. He needs to use those 5 games to build everything back up for the players, and we need to go to that Hearts game regardless of what happens before then. We need to go to that Hearts game and win. We can't get to the 25th and be like, oh, we still need 2 players, we'll maybe get them in the last couple of days of the window. Too late. If we go to that Hearts game and get beat, league's gone.
Well, I'm ready to smell the glove here. No time for Europa. No time whatsoever. Dazza, I hope you enjoy your holiday. I've heard it's lovely in Bologna. Try the food. I'm sure you'll have a great time. Don't know about the football.
I was there offshore just a few this summer. So, I've only come back.
Nice. Right, one thing which kind of hit headlines today, and I don't know if we really anticipated it, is the future of Daizen Maeda. Now, obviously, he wanted to go in the summer. We fucked him over. Now, this is his next opportunity to go. But I think where we're at right now, gentleman's agreement or no, well, I hope we never made a gentleman's agreement to let him go this in January. But we've got a league to win. Daizen Maeda is going to be a massive part of that, whether he goes or doesn't. If he goes, I think the league is almost not going to happen for us. I think it'd be a dereliction of duty if we let him go. I don't care about the money side of it, but letting Maeda go in January is a terrible decision. The guy's under contract. He signed the contract. We're not holding him hostage, but I think he needs to see out the end of the season. And whether we only get 5 million off him at the end of the season, I don't care. But we can't let him go in January. Again, did you feel strongly about that?
I have this feeling that when O'Neill was here, did we not get some sort of rumours that he was willing and happy to stay at the club? And I feel like maybe under Nancy, he's probably switched his mind again. But the fact that Martin O'Neill's came back, the way that O'Neill was revered by the current squad as well, maybe, just maybe, Daizen Maeda's heat's back in the game and he's not going to force the situation, because I'm with you, he can't be sold, but we equally can't have a pissed off Daizen Maeda who's going to, I wouldn't say he would purposely down tools, but mentally players, rightly or wrongly, they do get to a point in their job where they're not quite at the game. So hopefully we do the right thing, we keep him, hopefully we do the right thing and make him happy to stay. But if we did sell him, it can only be literally announcing him sold because the day before we announced like a fucking marquee out of this world striker who's just going to walk straight into the squad. You can't sell Daizen Maeda and have any moment of not being replaced instantly, if not previously.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think he's get the potential to play the biggest contribution in the run-in because, as we said, he can do the wing play and he can play as a centre-forward. Albeit the guy's got his flaws, but when Daizen's in the mood, he's irrepressible. Dazza, I think that out of everybody, he could be one of the biggest contributors to the league success. Do you feel strongly about keeping him?
Well, obviously, I do think he'll be here at the end of the season. least. Obviously, a new manager, Martin Neal said he'll go in and speak to him today, see how he feels. But we do need him, and we do need him backfiring, because last season's Daisy Maeda is this season is night and day.
Man, could you imagine if Jota comes back anytime soon and having Jota on the left, Dyson on the middle, and somebody of the ilk of Kuhn, or even just the drive, I know he wasn't everybody's favourite, but the drive of Theo Labada on the right again, that sort of front three. I think we built blowing teams out the water. Fuck you, Nancy, fucking chaos football attacking. I think three like that would be explosive going forward, all in the game.
For me, Jota, like a fully fit Jota is streets ahead of Tinetke. Even the Tinetke that we saw in his first game for Celtic. Jota, for me, the only thing he lacks is a bit of pace. He's got the trickery, he's got the end product. I think he's got a brilliant attitude to football. I think he always stands up, he doesn't hide. I'm a big fan of Jota. There was actually a funny photo I saw of Jota. He had this head in his hands, and the caption under it, this was just after Nancy had been sacked, the caption under it was, when you've spent a full month trying to figure out how to play wing back, you know. But hopefully he does come back. But obviously with an ACL, that's the type of injury where you can't just stroll right back into the side. You know, it could go badly for you. You might not be the same player, but time will tell. Look, there was one other kind of rumour about Brendan Rodgers taking over in Saudi Arabia and being after Callum McGregor. I just want to get your thoughts on it. I felt that even when Nancy was here and things weren't going his way, I just didn't have McGregor down as the type of person who would down tools and he would just say, well, I've had a brilliant time of it at Parkhead. I'm going off to make some money before I retire. I never would have put McGregor down for that. There was a podcast with Charlie Mulgrew and Scott Brown talking about it. Mulgrew asked Brown, do you think McGregor would go for it? And he said, well, there's a lot of money in Saudi Arabia, but at the same time, he said Callum McGregor loves his football here. I would be surprised if he was to do that. I can't see McGregor walking off into the Arabian sunset. Daza, whether that be in this winter or in the summer, I just can't see it happening. Where do you stand, and what would you do if you were in his position, even back in the Nancy era, when you might not be enjoying it, you might be kind of conflicting with the manager? I don't think that's the best solution, just to down tools. What's your thoughts?
But then again, I'm a fan. I know he's a player, you know what I mean? And I don't know. You never know the mindset. I mean, it's easy for me to say, no way, Celtic through the core. Would I do it? No. Would he do it? I don't know. But would you blame him? I don't know what I mean. If he was going to go and triple his wages for a couple of years, and he's in the back now, he's starting to tail off. You know what I mean? He's peak best. Then don't see why no. But right now, I'd be gutted if he done it.
Aye. Well, thankfully, it never kind of came to, like we saw with like Paul Le Guen and Barry Ferguson. It never came to that where, you know, the board backed the manager and the captain were at war. It was never one of the ones. But yeah, I think similarly with yourself, I would be surprised, be very, very surprised. But you don't know what everybody thinks. But hopefully McGregor will retire at Parkhead. McGinty, another wee rumour was Stevie Woods, that he'd already kind of handed in his resignation. It doesn't look like that's the case. I've not seen anything official, so I'd imagine that it'll be business as usual for the Celtic goalkeeping coach.
No idea. Obviously, we've all seen the rumours. There was talk about, was it the half-time or the end of the game, or whatever it was at the weekend, it looked like he was saying proper goodbyes. I don't know. I mean, this is a club that this season alone, John Kennedy leaving the club was a footnote about 2 weeks after he actually left the club. So would the club announce Stevie Woods if Woods had resigned because he's fallen out with somebody at the club? Fuck knows. My dad says Stevie Woods stays. I'd assume and would like to think that he would. You wouldn't like to see that kind of shit happen in mid-season, but with this club just now, you just generally don't fucking know.
Yeah, well, I just can't see it happening. If like he didn't fit into the vision of Nancy, well, for me that's that's gone now. There is no conflict. He remains a Celtic employee. One other question for both of you, Daz, I'll start with yourself, is the Celtic chairman, I think he's the chairman, the guy who's taking the place of Lawwell, he was saying that we all need to be united, and a lot of people have been talking about the continued absence of the Green Brigade. So what's your overall thoughts on that, on the absence, how it's affected the atmosphere of the Celtic players? And for me at the moment, it looks like the bridges are continuing to be kind of burned at this moment. I don't see a coming together anytime soon. I don't know when there'll be a reconciliation. At the moment, I'd be very surprised if those two parties got around the table and hammered out some sort of kind of agreement. How do you see that solution, that situation resolving itself?
Peter Lawwell's resignation statement pretty much put the death knell in the Green Brigade, because obviously he blamed him for a lot of so he basically meant that any other board now looks weak, they entertain it. They should entertain it. There should be ground made up. There should be, like, both senses. No, just the Green Brigade need to hold their hands up and say, look, right, we've done X wrong, Y wrong. We won't do that again. Board say, we handled this wrongly. So both of them need to get down the table and say, look, between us, and fuck it. Whether I see it happening or not, I don't know. You need the Green Brigade there, because the atmosphere, the tifos, everything at the day is superb. And that's what I mean. To stick to the atmosphere, the noise, and the displays, then brilliant. And obviously their charity work as well. I think there just needs to be like screwing up on both sides.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Also, there's elements of the support that don't see eye to eye with the Green Brigade, but if you strip it down to just what they bring on a match day, the atmosphere, the noise, the tifos, the charity work, whatever it is, they bring something, and the club's blocking them out. The club's actively blocking out fans, wanting that aspect to be stopped. Somebody has to give something first, and then hopefully the other side gives a little bit as well, because they need to own up to their own feelings, and at the same time they need to help each other out, because it seems like the Green Brigade have all these demands but never want to budge. And I'll simplify this and probably get it wrong, so don't crucify me, people, but one of the things is always no pyros and no politics. And yet the Green Brigade would always turn around and go, nah, fuck you, we're going to do it anyway. They need to turn around and say, look, promise, we're never doing the pyros. We understand the safety aspect. Agree to disagree, but we won't do it. They need to give something for the club to then turn around and say, right, okay, we realise that, we're heavy-handed with stewarding, we'll tone it down. We'll take down the stupid fucking fences inside the stadium that looks like we're basically treating you like cattle. They need to give something on each side, a gentleman's word sort of thing, and bring each other back to the table, because all it's doing, regardless of what you think about the Green Brigade, overall, all this entire thing is doing is driving a wedge and making the club overall look like a shit show. And somebody needs to be the bigger man. And generally, that biased opinion from my side, that needs to be the club to show that first, I think, because they are the bigger man to begin with, in the sense of they are the fucking club. If they give something, maybe they get something back. I don't know, but something needs to give.
What? I've not made any secret that I'm not a fan of the Green Brigades and everything that they stand for. At the same time, I am no defender of the board, but what I see is two parties who are equally stubborn. Now, the board, as you rightly say, McGinty, they kind of hold all the cards. So if there was to be some sort of concession made, you'd probably see it, or some sort of initiation of dialogue. You probably expect that to come from the board because they hold all the cards. But at the same time, they've got a reason or an excuse that it's a health and safety concern, and that the way that they've framed it, they've positioned it, is that it's from Glasgow City Council, who they need to get approval for in order to kind of reopen that part of the standing section, because they've obviously have been health and safety concerns which they've involved the police, and Glasgow City Council apparently are saying, well, we're not satisfied at that point. Now, whether that's completely legitimate or whether the board have kind of manufactured that kind of situation and they're saying, well, it's out of our hands until Glasgow City acquiesce to letting them back in. So the board have kind of played it very, very cutely, and that they've kind of saying, well, it's not really us, it's the council. We need to get approval from them. But at the same time, the Green Brigades, they're extremely stubborn, because I don't think that they're going to admit to any feelings whatsoever. They're still going to behave the way that they do. I don't know if they would give up with the pyros or whatever else that they do. I don't know how organised that they are and how disciplined that they can potentially be if they need to give concessions in order to kind of meet the board halfway. So I think Daz is right, that they do need to meet each other halfway, and they kind of do need to compromise, negotiate. But I think, as I said, both parties are extremely stubborn, and it'll have to come from the board. But whether this is achievable, I do not know. And part of me thinks that nothing is going to be resolved between now and the end of the season, which is not good for the atmosphere. It's not good for the players either. So that does worry me. Does worry me a lot. And I don't know if we're going to have to rethink it again, rehash it out in the summer. But I think things are getting worse. The relationship between the fans, the collective, and the board is not getting any better right now. Regardless of the kind of battle between the board and the Green Brigade, as a collective, I think it's just getting bad. And every time something goes wrong in the stadium, you've got people standing up and position themselves towards the like I sit in the south stand, and you see people just standing up and turning towards the board and shouting abuse at them or whatever and heckling them. And that's becoming a constant feature now in the game. So I don't know how things are going to wrap up. Guys, we've been here for almost an hour and a half. We've got a cramped fixture list for January, but we're starting off with Dundee United on Saturday at 3 p.m. Something that I think we're all looking forward to. Hopefully a wee bit of positivity. Mark O'Neill back in the ground. Any kind of final thoughts for you guys before we wrap it up for tonight? Starting with yourself, Dazza. And by the way, thank you for joining us. It's been really good to see you.
Aye, you too, boys. My final thought, the league's there to be won. We can do it. Just back the manager now properly, and let's get a bit of harmony back. Then I'll see you all on the drawing gate in May.
Keep it short and sweet, and literally what Dazza says, and reiterate what I said about the Hearts game. We need to win that game. We're 6 points behind. We're halfway through the season. It's not a mammoth task, but if we end January 9 points behind, that's a big gap and a big turnaround still needs. So, as Dazza says, back the manager, get the 3-4 key players that we need in, that striker, that defender, that right winger, and let's just get on with the season. Reset it, start again, go. 6 points is
down and out in April, champions in May.
And moving on, I've got a 20-question quiz.
I'm going to absolutely scalp you, Gavin.
Just joke. Right, anyway, to everybody in the comments, thank you so much for sticking with us and getting your comments in. But end of one regime, start of a new, with Martin O'Neill coming back in. Exciting times for Celtic, and there's a lot of jeopardy between now and the end of the season. So for the Jungle Gyms over and out, we will be back next Tuesday, hopefully, and we can hopefully talk about a victory against Dundee United. So everybody, cheers, good night.